Finally the sun's coming out. It's nice. And a good reminder that summer's ahead. And we all love our Colorado summers, don't we? With the warm days and the cool nights and that blue, 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 blue sky that can't be found on any painter's palette. And summer's the time of year that I, along with many of you, I know, love to get out on the trails that are all around us. There's so many, and it's likely that each of you has a favorite trail or two. One of my favorite trails is the trail that goes to Williams Lake and destinations far beyond. That's a picture of it. The trail starts up Capitol Creek Road if you go up Old Snowmass, and it's up in the Maroon Bell Snowmass Wilderness. And normally the hike is pretty easy. It's a 3.5-mile round trip hike, but there's a road that's really rough to get to where you start, and often that road is in such terrible shape you have to walk that road too, which adds miles. Well, some of you know that Williams Lake is where John Denver was inspired to write his song, Rocky Mountain High. And we even have a member of our parish who was with him that night when he wrote the songs. I'll skip the details because they're entertaining. But anyway, John was there that night that he wrote that song during the Perseid meteor showers. And hence the lyric from that song, I've seen it raining fire in the sky. And I love the words within that song. Now he walks in quiet solitude, the forest and the streams, seeking grace in every step he takes. What a great lyric and line for us each to remember as you're out hiking. Think of yourself as seeking grace in each step that you take, knowing that you've already received that grace. Well, not too many years ago, on one of our hikes to Williams Lake, my wife, Regina, and I set out in the morning on that trail to go up to the lake. And because of the road conditions that were terrible, we had to add those few miles to get to the lake. And I was carrying a fairly large day pack, as did my wife, Regina. And arriving at the lake late morning on this absolutely stunning day, we hiked around the lake until we found a perfect spot to relax and have a little picnic and just take in the scenery. And there was really nobody else there, which was fabulous. Well, the sun was so warm and the food was so good that I took a pretty lengthy nap just lakeside that afternoon. Well, by mid-afternoon, it was time for us to head back down the trail and back home. And not long into the trail, on the way back, I began to feel like there was something wrong with me. And I got really winded, and I couldn't imagine what was up. The pack felt really heavy to me. My steps felt heavy. I just didn't feel right. And I wondered what was going on with my body, so we took a break. Well, after 5 minutes or so, we started hiking again. And once again, after a bit of time, I got really winded, and the pack felt incredibly heavy, and I began to get concerned. So we took another break, and the stopping and starting continued for the next hour or so. And when we took our last break, my wife, Regina, began to laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. I said, what on earth is so darn funny? I'm dying here. She laughed some more, and I gave her this perplexed look, and she then pointed at the day pack. And through her laughter, I unzipped the zipper, only to find that she must have put 25 or 30 pounds of stones into that pack while I was taking my nice nap by the side of the shore. And as I removed the stones, she continued to laugh, a laugh actually that we share to this day. Speaking of stones, Happy Easter. Happy Easter. And I love the line in our reading today that reads, they found the stone rolled away in front of the tomb. And today is the day we celebrate the fact that the stone was rolled away and the tomb was empty. Jesus had been raised from the dead. And while I'll have more to say about the stone that was rolled away, for a moment I want to just share the general outline of the Easter story with you. It's important for us to hear that story over and over and over again, to take it into our lives, to make it part of our daily lives, because it brings us hope and courage and helps us to know where we are headed no matter what. So this is a story just to take in, not just Easter Day, but all the time. Well, the last week of Jesus' life was so busy, exhausting, upending, And as many of you know, it was during that last week of Jesus' life that many of his greatest teachings occurred. The religious leaders and the political leaders were pretty ticked off at Jesus. They weren't very happy about the movement that was happening around him, and they certainly found his message of love to be offensive because it was threatening to their power. Sometimes people in power don't understand love. Well, before he was killed on Jesus' last night, he had a meal with his friends, including one who would betray him. Isn't that interesting? Jesus didn't have any qualifications to receive communion that night. Just come one and come all, which is why we have the same thing going on here with our communion. But anyway, Jesus gave those who were there a new understanding of bread and wine that night, and at the dinner, he washed the feet of his dinner companions to demonstrate that a heart of service and serving others through action is what it means to follow Jesus. We know that early Friday morning, after he was arrested, he went through a number of trials, both political and religious. Some people think up to 6, back and forth between different people and different groups of people. Well, we know that he was sentenced to death as a result of all of that. And by mid-morning Friday, Jesus was nailed to a cross, and by 3 in the afternoon, he was dead. And Jesus' body was taken down from the cross and placed into the tomb, and the tomb was sealed with a huge stone. Obviously, despair set in for Jesus' followers. And many of them were really worried, too, because they thought, well, if they killed him, they might kill us, too. Well, Friday night, Saturday night passed, and then early the next morning, around sunrise or just before, some women got up and they went to the tomb to anoint Jesus' body and just to say some prayers. But when they arrived, they discovered the stone had been rolled away. And the Gospels, all 4 of them, share the basic fact that Jesus' body was not present. There's also a consensus that the women who went to the tomb were told that Jesus had been risen from the dead. And indeed he had. They were told not to be afraid, to go tell the other disciples what had happened. We also know from very early eyewitness accounts that Jesus, after he rose, did indeed appear to his disciples and to others in Galilee, Jerusalem, on a road to Emmaus, and on a sandy shore on the Sea of Galilee. We're told that Jesus appeared on a variety of occasions to well over 500 people after his resurrection. And Jesus was bodily raised from the dead, as those early eyewitnesses attested to. Well, as we think about that first Easter morning, it's important to keep some other things in mind that were going on at the time around this whole story. You see, Jesus was not the first guy that people thought might be the Messiah. In fact, there were lots of other supposed messiahs at the time of Jesus and before. Other supposed messiahs who people made sacrifices to learn from and to follow. But every one of those other supposed messiahs, every one of those movements around those messiahs, all of them died out. And they died out because the person they were following died, never to be seen again. And as people say, people tend not to keep following a dead guy around. And also has been said by some, the earliest Christians following Jesus' resurrection had no New Testament. The earliest followers of Jesus did not follow Jesus because of the Bible. They followed Jesus because of what they had experienced firsthand, his resurrection. Another person put it this way: the earliest followers began a Jesus movement not because of what is in the Bible. There wasn't one. They didn't follow Jesus because of what they read. There was nothing to read. They began a Jesus movement because of Jesus and his resurrection. That is the only reason the Jesus movement started so long ago. And I believe a lot changes when we trust the Easter story. The empty tomb means we can let go of fear in life. We can let go of fear of death. I know that many of us miss people on this day that we remember celebrating Easter with over the years. I miss so many. But Easter reminds us that we can trust while we may really miss them and even grieve. They are more than okay, even if we don't feel okay. It means we can trust that death is a new beginning, a doorway, a passage into what follows his life. It means that heaven is ahead and we know how the game ends. So why worry about what the score is? We know how it ends. We know that we win, and we're heaven bound. The empty tomb means we're living in the world, but we're not of this world. We're simply passing through. And it means that eternal life and what is good has the last word. Well, anyway, remember earlier I said I love the line in the Easter story that reads, "They found the stone rolled away from the tomb." Now, that stone in front of the tomb was big. Not something that fits in a day pack on a mountain trail. It was a big stone. It would take a bunch of CrossFitters to move. That's power. And it took power to move that stone, a lot of power. In fact, it took the power of God. It took Easter power. The very power of God. A power that does not cost us anything, but cost God everything. As a quick aside, you've heard me say many times before that in the midst of all the challenges and pains and heartaches in life, blessings and what is good and right and true and the way it should be surrounds all of us. It's always that mixture of the tough with the blessings. But on this Easter, whatever's going on, there is a lot to be grateful for this Easter, even if and when some of our other parts of life are hard. See, there are amazing people everywhere, and I think about this. You know, most people are really good. It's just the majority doesn't get the attention the not-so-good extremes get, unfortunately. And even in the horror of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, that horrible thing that evil guy has unleashed in Europe, and all that horror and all the death and all the suffering, have you been paying attention to all the stories of the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that are acting selflessly to do everything to help the millions of refugees? It is an astonishing story and shows just how great people can be, just how great some countries can be, just how great some governments can be. And it shows that darkness is not going to overcome light. It just won't. Darkness didn't overcome light in the European war in the last century. It's not going to in this deal either. Loving people are showing up all over the world doing the right thing. And I point this out to give context to what I have to say next. In the midst of our boundless blessings, in the midst of all that is good, in the midst of being surrounded by great people out there, we all have our stuff. Stuff that can feel like we're carrying stones around that weigh us down. Even if we're on a beautiful trail, we got stones we're carrying around. There's so many possibilities for what kind of stones we carry. They're the kinds of stones that keep us stuck and mired in a way of being or doing things, that cause joy to be fleeting. There's stones that get in the way of living that tell us there's no reason to have any hope about something. Stones that keep us in the dark. Stones that keep us perplexed as to what to do about a situation or something or somebody. There's stones of broken relationships or marriages. Ones that limit our perspectives, cause us to be afraid. Stones that lead us to hesitate taking risks in life. And taking a step out of our comfort zones into new chapters that could bring us great joy. There's stones that keep us mired in regret and guilt over something, that cause us to be pessimistic or cause us to question our ability to overcome something or impede our ability to work through healing a relationship. There's stones of addictions, struggles with forgiveness, stones that cause us to act in ways we wish we wouldn't, stones of regret, of having a hard time just letting go of something we just need to finally let go of. There's stones of grief and loneliness and feeling misunderstood. Yes, I believe that each of us here today, even in the midst of all the wonder and the blessings of our lives, and they are there, and it's important to pay attention to them. Yes, each one of us likely carries a day pack with stones that weigh us down, tire us out, and leave us feeling winded. Sometimes others put those stones there, and sometimes those stones are there of our own doing. But regardless, you and I are stone carriers, aren't we? Remember on this day that the power of God rolled the stone away from the tomb and liberated Jesus from death into eternal life. That power that raised Jesus from the dead, that power that rolled the stone away, that Easter power, that Spirit of Christ is within you right now and within me, whether or not we're aware of it. Easter is for sure the day to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. But I believe Easter is also the day that God invites us for the first time or the 1000th time to accept and to turn to and to tap into God's power, the ultimate stone roller. What stones do you need rolled away today? What do you want to get out of your day pack to lighten your load? What might you need to let go of or finally release? What has you worn out? What do you want to no longer carry around? Turn to our risen Lord, that power of God that is within, and ask God to help you roll those stones away. And anticipate and expect that God will help you unpack and release whatever stones you are carrying. Resurrection power, God's power, Easter power. Turn to it. Give God thanks for it. Accept it. And as you do, watch as your day pack gets lighter and lighter, whatever trail you happen to find yourself upon. And finally, remember this. As was said by St. Paul, who encountered the risen Christ, said the following because Jesus was raised from the dead. The reason Paul said what I'm about to share, that many of you know already, is because Jesus was raised from the dead, and he knew it, and he believed it, he could feel it, and he knew the power was within him. So Paul wrote this: we can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. We can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. Happy Easter. And let us now pray.